Learning checkpoint 3.5. Number 1 says, in order to find the y-intercept of a quadratic function, you should do the hokey pokey, evaluate at x equals 0 or evaluate at y equals 0. So when we're talking about the y-intercept, we need to remember what that means. The y-intercept, just pretend it's a straight line. The y-intercept is going to be the location where our graph crosses the y-axis. So I'm just going to make up some random quadratic graph. Quadratic graphs look like little U shapes. They're called parabolas. And the y-intercept is the location where you cross the y-axis. So that's going to be our y-intercept right here, and we're going to just write the coordinates of it. I'm up at some value of y, and then I need to know where I am along the x-axis. Your x-axis is this one that runs left to right, and if I'm smack dab in the middle of that x-axis, that means I'm not to the left, I'm not to the right, I'm exactly at x equals 0. So hopefully that gives you enough of a hint. Number 2 says, in order to find the axis of symmetry for a quadratic equation in standard form, what do we need to do? This problem, guys, is straight up memorization from class. The axis of symmetry is going to be a very special little piece of your quadratic formula, and it's going to, here, I'll narrow it down for you. You're going to have to see if you remember. It's either negative b over 2 times a or positive b over 2 times a. So if you need to flip back and look and see if you remember which piece sounds more like it's part of your quadratic formula, I've narrowed it down for you between these two pieces, and only one of them will work for your axis of symmetry. If you keep watching, though, the next problem might give it away. Number 3 says select all of the true statements for our function, and this function happens to be given to you in standard form. That's ax squared minus 4x or minus bx plus c, and the a, b, c are your numbers that you see. So this one says to select all of the true statements. We're going to go through and take a look real quick at the type of answer choices that you have. So the first two deal with your y-intercept, and we just talked about that on the very first problem, that the y-intercept is the place where x equals 0. So if you come to your function and you plug in x equals 0, that'd be 2 times 0 squared minus 4 times 0 plus 7, and you go through and use your order of operations to simplify this, you'll get some sort of number as your answer. You'll either get 7 or you'll get 9, and it's going to be your job to choose which one of these is the correct y-intercept. Your middle two choices are about your axis of symmetry, and I have part of that snipped right here. Your vertex and your axis of symmetry go hand in hand. So I'm going to draw another ugly little graph for you real quick. So let's just pretend that this is our graph. Your axis of symmetry is the imaginary dotted line that cuts your graph in half. And then the vertex is actually the spot that is either the high point or the low point of your graph, and it always sits on your axis of symmetry. So I'm going to abbreviate axis of symmetry is the dotted pink line that cuts your graph in half or reflects the graph. And then your vertex, it actually sits on that line, and it's the high point or the low point of your graph, depending on which way that graph flips. Now, your vertex is found by doing negative b over 2 times a and then plugging that value back into the equation. So if we go to our original function right here, we need b and a so that we can plug in to that negative b over 2 times a. So I know that a is my first coefficient, b is going to be my second coefficient, and now I'm ready to plug in. If I do negative b over 2 times a, I'm going to do negative or opposite of b over 2 times a. And I will let you finish simplifying that all the way through to get your x value for the axis of symmetry. Once you get that, you're going to plug that number in to the equation to see if you get 7 as your answer or if you get 5 as your answer. So again, simplify this part right here in green. You'll get your answer. It'll either be +1 or -1. And if you look at your next two choices, it kind of gives away which x value is correct. But you're going to go plug in that x value, and you will either get 7 as your answer when you plug in, or you'll get 5 as your answer when you plug in. The last question on this learning checkpoint says the graph of the function opens blank, the x-coordinate is blank, the y-coordinate is blank, and this parabola has a blank. Let me move those notes out of the way. This question had a hint for you, so when you guys click on it, you should be seeing this hint pop up in the question. For the first blank, your choices are up or down. So for the first blank, you're going to type if this function opens up or down when you graph it. The second bullet point in this little snip right here helps you figure that out. So your parabola opens up when your a value is positive. When this a value is negative, it opens down. So a is the number up in front of the parentheses. Our a is -3. So figure out if that would open the graph up or if that would open the graph down. And you'll type either up or down into this first blank. The x-coordinate of the vertex is, so for your second and third blanks, you're just typing a number, no variables, no parentheses, no commas, just the number with a negative sign if it's negative. Let's go see what vertex form tells us about the vertex. So vertex form is called vertex form because it shows us the vertex. The point H, K is our vertex. The x value or the x-coordinate is whatever comes first. So that's going to be whichever number is sitting in the place of that H. H is whatever I am subtracting inside my parentheses. So let's go look at our parentheses. Our parentheses say +6, so we need to figure out what that really means. I want it to say negative. Remember that +6 is the same thing as subtracting -6. So if I subtract H and I'm subtracting -6, think about what the whole value of that H is, and that's what's going to go in the second blank. The y-coordinate of your vertex is going to be this K, or the number that hangs on to the end of your equation. So come and look at your equation, figure out which number is hanging on the end, and type it into the third blank. And then this parabola has a blank. Well, your hint for that one says, for the fourth blank, your choices are minimum or maximum. So based off of your answer for the first blank, you'll be able to answer the last blank. If your parabola opens up, you have a minimum point. If your parabola opens down, you'll have a maximum point.